It's homecoming at the Dome on Saturday. Can Syracuse bring home a win? We'll find out in just a second. But first, I've got two specials that I want to talk to you about at Wager Talk this week only. We have $50 off any NFL or college football package using coupon code FBALL50. And I've also got my college basketball package through Thursday at midnight using coupon code TRIGCBB. That's TRIGCBB. It's a huge discount on the full season, the biggest discount that we're going to offer on that at any point this year, and that expires on Thursday night. So coupon code TRIGCBB, full season college basketball access. All right, YouTube videos have been crushing it. Last week, I did 3 YouTube free pick videos. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, under, wins easily. Texas Tech, covers easily. And then in the NFL, the Browns ended up being a client play, and they went outright. So these have been rolling all year. I wish, these are the games that keep kind of just missing my card that I end up doing video plays on. They've been crushing it. So that's great, but it's also annoying. I feel like I should have more of these on my client card. But this one I do have on my client card. This is a 4% client football play for me. I've now won 4 straight weeks in college football. I've turned a profit 4 weeks in a row. Hopefully this is a 5th. And this will be one of my client plays this week for college football. I'm anticipating a little bit bigger card, kind of like last week, 3 and 2 across 5 plays. I have a feeling I'll have, when it's all said and done, 4 or 5 as well this week. So I'm going to give you this one for free. And I love Syracuse in this spot for a couple of reasons. But I want to start off by pointing out this is a massive revenge game from last year. Syracuse went down to Blacksburg last year, standalone game on a Thursday night, and got absolutely run out of the building. It was never close. It was 30-3 at halftime. Thankfully, Virginia Tech called off the Dogs, and I believe the game ended 38-10. But Syracuse was thoroughly embarrassed, and I do think that they've had this spot circled all season long. If you remember, there was a lot of people that were very high on Virginia Tech. We here in Syracuse have kind of had this game circled as, one of the biggest home games of the year, the other being Miami at the end of the season. Syracuse hasn't had a home game since September. They've been on the road for a while now. They went, since the Holy Cross game, they've played 3 consecutive road games now, UNLV, NC State, and then, of course, last week's abomination at Pitt. The funny thing is the trip to Virginia Tech last year in that blowout felt a lot like the Pitt game last week. I was on the wrong side of that one. Kyle McCord probably played the worst game of his career. It felt like it was over before it started. And it reminded me of just how bad Syracuse has been in these midweek conference games over the last 2 seasons. Earlier this year, they lost a Friday night game as a 10-point favorite to Stanford. I already said, last year, Virginia Tech destroyed them in Blacksburg. You go back early to the end of that season, they lost a home game as a favorite to Boston College. And then 2 years ago in 2022, they barely beat Virginia at home on one of those midweek conference games. I believe they were a 10-point favorite and barely won. I think they won in the last second field goal. So maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But really, when I watched last week's game, a couple of things. One, it was a disastrous game for Kyle McCord. If you've watched Kyle McCord throughout his career at Ohio State, you know that he's got that dud type of game in him. There's going to be 1 or 2 games a year where he just doesn't have it. And last week he didn't have it. Also, credit to the Pitt D coordinator because he had McCord thoroughly confused. Kyle McCord is someone this season at Syracuse that's really relied upon. Syracuse is not moving the ball great on the ground right now. They really rely on McCord's arm. He's been making tough throw after tough throw. He fits balls into tight windows, and credit to Pitt for just having him so confused that he was just straight up throwing it to the other team. And before you knew it, multiple pick sixes later, Syracuse is in a huge hole, which means they have to throw it. And McCord's confidence was completely shattered. I think that's all there is to the drubbing last week. I think it was a great game plan by Pitt that worked out. and worked out so good that multiple pick sixes not only put Syracuse way behind, but also crushed McCord's confidence. And it was just going to be one of those games very similar to the Virginia Tech last game to Syracuse that they just never got off the mat and they were going to lose in blowout fashion, which they did. I am not convinced that Virginia Tech is the better team here. And this line is suggesting that they are. Bet up all the way to 4 from I believe where it opened, maybe 1.5. I disagree with that move, and I disagree with the number being 4. Now, let's go back to Virginia Tech's game last week. They were far from impressive. They did win by an impressive margin. 21-6 is an impressive win, but they were outgained 356 to 233. That is not a good Georgia Tech team. I sort of talked about it last week. The reason that I didn't want to take Georgia Tech plus all those points is I just don't think they're a very good team. And that's why I went with the under, because I didn't think Virginia Tech was going to do much offensively, and they didn't. And that's not a great Georgia Tech defense. That Georgia Tech defense is not better than Syracuse's defense. We saw that in the Georgia Tech-Syracuse game earlier this year. I mean, Kyron Drones at this point, he's pretty much going to throw for like 150, 200 yards per game. There is like zero sort of explosive pass offense for Virginia Tech. It's just, he's going to get 150 to 200, probably not going to turn it over much, but they're not going to torch Syracuse's secondary. And they've had success running the ball, Virginia Tech, that is. But, now you've got Tootin is probably going to play Virginia Tech running back, but he's really been a workhorse for them. And so I like the fact that we might not get him at 100%. I just don't see like a ton of big play ability in that Virginia Tech offense right now. I think they do enough things well to, beat some of these lesser teams. But if you remember, go back a couple months ago. I mean, this is a team that lost to Vanderbilt. They have some bad losses, and I think they've, kind of been able to just get by some of these lesser ACC teams. Now, you could say Syracuse is one of those. I kind of disagree with that still. This is still a 2-loss Syracuse team that was a 4th and 8 away from beating Stanford and had their one bad performance last week. I will tell you one thing. I do think the start time of noon is really going to help Syracuse out here. It's homecoming. But one thing about Syracuse, noon home games at the Dome are not sleepy like some of these other, some of the Southern schools. I went and a couple weeks ago, I talked about Clemson and talking to some of their fans when I was down there, and them really not liking the noon kickoffs because it infringes upon their tailgate. They like to, kind of have like a longer lead up time to the game. Syracuse doesn't have tailgating like that. Syracuse tailgating is kind of a pain. A lot of times for these noon games, people will go to the bars. They'll be at the bars at 9 a.m. You're not going to have any problem getting this Syracuse crowd, which will likely sell out or be very close to a sellout at the Dome, up for this game. It's going to be a great environment. I was at the noon Georgia Tech game earlier this year. It was a fantastic environment. Heck, even the Holy Cross game, with the exception of students kind of like not being super into that game, was a really good environment for a noon kickoff. So I expect that Syracuse is going to be out in full force. And the team that might be a little bit of a sleep at that point might be Virginia Tech, having to come up here for the noon kick, having Clemson on deck. That's a little bit of a look-ahead spot. So not only do we have the revenge here for Syracuse, we've got a pretty big look-ahead for Virginia Tech with Clemson on deck next week. I like Kyle McCord. I don't think last week was a fair sort of that's not what he is. I think he had one of the worst games of his career and just lost all sorts of confidence. Back at home, at the Dome, I think he's going to play better. I think Syracuse is going to play better. And if they can eliminate the turnovers, I just don't see Virginia Tech pulling away in this game. If you're going to give me 4 points with the spot being what it is, huge home game for Syracuse coming off of a bad loss. Virginia Tech has Clemson last week. Massive revenge from last year's embarrassing loss in Blacksburg for Syracuse. Kind of a no-brainer to take the points here. Syracuse +4. This will be a client play for me. 4% client best bet. Please like and subscribe to our Wager Talk YouTube channel so we can continue to bring you free picks all season long. And don't forget coupon code FBALL50 for $50 off full season access rest of the season for NFL or college football, any handicapper on the site. I'm Adam Trigger, and check out my other videos. I'll have a couple more free pick videos on the YouTube Wager Talk YouTube channel this week. We have been crushing these all year, and I expect to keep it going this week. We'll talk to you guys soon.